Hello and welcome, I'm Paul from Mostly Off Topic. I'm going to be reviewing the Withered Heath, which is the latest adventure pack for the Lord of the Rings LCG by FFG. And it's hot on the heels of the Wilds of Rhovanion, and it kind of expands out that Dale trait, as well as adding a few other things, predominantly around kind of Bjornings. So I'm using RingsDB, which doesn't have the images up for this pack yet. So what I'll do is I'll stick a scan of the image kind of somewhere in the video, so you can see the card art in all its glory. And we'll start with Grimbeorn the hero that comes with the pack, and then we'll kind of step through just as we did the other one of the video. I'll be talking about the cards. It'll be a very quick run through, offering my opinion on each of the cards, thinking about how it could be played or any peculiarities of the rules, and just generally thinking about how this pack lives in particular context with the Wilds of Rhovanion Deluxe player cards. We introduced that Deluxe and kind of said it was good as an entry point to kind of create a self-contained deck with core and that, and I think this is continued within the action pack as well. So let's start with Grimbeorn the Old. Tactics, hero, 11th threat. If you ran this as your kind of third hero alongside Bard and Brand, you'd be running a 30 threat deck, which is alright, perhaps a little bit high for a solo deck, but is not at all outside the realms of playability. It's well within kind of tolerance in that regard. No willpower, 3 attack, 3 defense, 5 hit points. He's a Bjorning warrior, so not got the Dale trait, so will not benefit from a lot of the kind of like Dale stuff. But does come with Sentinel, and a response that says once he's defended, you can spend 1 resource from his pool, and only his pool. Then you declare him as an attacker against that enemy, the one that should attack you, and you resolve that attack. For that attack only, you get a -2 to the enemy's defense. So it's effectively swinging against a 5, he would kill a 5 hit point and defense kind of enemy of only variations of that. He doesn't ready to then kind of attack again, so this is from his exhausted state, and also the attack can only be made against that enemy. It doesn't matter where the enemy's attacked from, though, so if there's some shenanigans where they attack from the staging area, you can kind of get back at them. And also because you declare him as an attacker, that allows the ranged keyword from any of your other kind of heroes that may be hanging around, or any other characters, because they can then join in an attack at the declare and attacker step. Now, I had a look at this rules wise. I can't find any rules that kind of say that you can't do that. So in my view, I run Grimbeorn in a deck with Legolas and Haldir in a multiplayer kind of context, and I sometimes will Sentinel for the other player to trigger Grimbeorn's ability to then have Legolas and Haldir join in the attack, try to one-shot whatever it is that's kind of attacked my fellow player or what have you. Good thing about this 3 defense and 5 hit points and a Sentinel is a really good character to have around at that early part of the game where you're just trying to sort your stuff out, basically. It just allows you to kind of stabilize and to kind of get pushed through until you've built enough of a board state that you're kind of on top of the game. And it still gives you access to tactics and to kind of the tactics sphere, though you need to bear in mind how often are you going to be spending his single resource. It's only going to generate 1 resource. If it's your only tactics kind of hero, then you're going to be using that resource to pay for his ability consistently, or you're going to have to save up. A good card to have for tactics resource is Proud Hunters, where you get resource equal to the destroyed enemy's threat, printed threat. Okay, so that's Grimbeorn the Old. I think it's a really solid hero to consider for solo decks or 2-player decks. I'm not sure it kind of works outside of 2-player, if I'm honest. Solo is predominantly because of the ability to stabilize early doors, and 2 players because of that ability to kind of join with some ranged if you put him into your murder death kill deck. I would suggest that a good attachment for him would be Raiment of War, which would give him +1 attack, +1 defense, and an additional 2 hit points. It takes up both restricted slots, but it's definitely kind of like worth considering for him. So looking through the allies, then we have Guardian of Esgaroth. It it's a Dale character. It triggers off that kind of Dale, get me a player card attachment, please. For each different player card attachment it has, it gets +1 to all its stat line. It starts off quite low. It's 2 cost. It's in the leadership sphere. You can reduce its cost with King of Dale, and basically you're going to be sticking attachments on it. And it's quite a good generic kind of card. Again, stick some attachments on it. All the attachments will benefit it, depending upon how you kind of want to move it. And it's probably the kind of card that will decide upon the role of it based upon the attachments you pull out, rather than anything else. If you pull out a defending attachment, then you could probably use it as defender. If you're just pulling out a kind of the map of Rhovanion, you're possibly using it for its willpower. It'll get the flat +1 willpower benefit from Brand if you're running in a Dale deck, and I would suggest that's possibly what you would be doing. So looking at the Squire's Helm, which is the next leadership actually attachment, so we're doing this by sphere, not by type. It's a 1 cost attachment, item attachment, armor, so it's for free on Red Water Sentry. Attach it to an ally, not to a hero. You can't do that, it's restricted. Limit 1 per ally, and it gets +2 hit points. So if it goes on to Red Water Sentry, or even onto the Guardian Escrow, it's going to benefit them. Red Water Sentry would be a +5 defense, 7 hit point if you had this in Mail of Horberg. And then remember, you can mess around the location of attachments in the Dale deck, relatively simple. So I think this is a definite kind of auto include for a Dale deck. Possibly a 2 of rather than a 3 of, just so you kind of got some options. Moving then into tactics, we get the Bjorning Skin Changer. This is a 2 cost ally. Can't be reduced with King of Dale. It's a Bjorning, not a Dale. It's got 1 across the line, 3 hit points. However, you get to choose a Bjorning ally that's either in your hand or in the discard pile, with a printed cost of 3 or more. High Bjorn, and you discard it to put that ally into play. You don't need to exhaust, so you could have gone questing or defended or what have you with this, and then you kind of decided to bring up Bjorn. So I would say a 2 of if you're running 3 of Bjorn, because you need to get Bjorn out and discarded. In Lord of the Rings, you can't just discard cards, you need to have something to trigger the discard of cards. So if you got 3 of Bjorn, it could clog up your hand for a little bit. His 6 cost tactics, that ally, but it's worth it because he could be a game changer, absolute game changer in terms of what he does. Continuing Bjorn, in the tactics sphere, we have an event, cost 1, where you declare a Bjorning character as an attacker or defender against an enemy. That enemy gets -2 attack and -2 defense until the end of the phase. So very, very useful. If you're in the multiplayer, end of the phase is quite important because the ranged characters might be able to attack out of turn or what have you, and it's useful whether you're defending or attacking, so you kind of have it in hand, but it's got to be a Bjorning character that's defending. So Grimbeorn or Beorn or one of the skin changes, what have you, if you're building your deck that way. It's kind of almost a little bit like a feint, I guess, in that it's giving you greater protection against the attack, but Shadow Cast will still trigger. So you've got to be kind of thinking about it. Why would you run this rather than running feint? I guess you'd run this because you want to get the -2 defense until the end of phase, so you can swing back at the enemy and have a greater opportunity to kind of kill it. You could give -4 if you're triggering it off of Grimbeorn's attack, because it would just stack with his response. You can play multiple responses to the same trigger. Woodman's Clearing, which is a lore attachment, 0 cost. This is the kind of ancient Matham of threat reduction. I really like it. I run 3 copies of this in one of my decks because it's such a good way to kind of get a bit of threat reduction, and with some reasonable anticipation you can work out who's going to be the first player. So they're the one that's going to get the threat reduction by 3. You also need to be thinking about when that location is going to leave play. If it's in the staging area, do you have Northern Tracker, for instance? If it's the active location, will it synergize with Legolas Hero, where you place 2 progress on the active location? Map of Rhovanion a reasonable synergy with this to control when that location is going to leave. It can be a little bit awkward to play when you're kind of trying to work out who the first player is in multiplayer. So a bit of discussion about what to do and how to play it is fairly simple. sensible. I usually play it on the active location when I know that is the first player's turn, and then we just try to quest to make sure we've covered the active location to kind of get that out. Okay, moving on to lore again, we've got a 2-cost event, the Hidden Way. What this allows you to do is a bit of encounter deck shenanigans. So at the beginning of the quest phase, you search top 5 cards, you have a look for a location, you swap that location with the active location, and that active location goes into the staging area. So it avoids kind of travel cost indirectly. And then you're drawing one less encounter card anyway because you pulled one out. It's worth bearing in mind that according to the latest FAQ, that then reveal one less encounter card this phase to minimum 0 will only trigger if you have drawn a location and therefore got the additional threat in the staging area from the response. So you can see here the word. So you can see here the word then in the FAQ. It's fairly clear about the fact that if an effect uses the word then, the preceding effect must resolve successfully for the subsequent effect to resolve. So you must find a location, you must move in the active location in the staging area and replace it. Then you only get to reveal kind of one more. So now we move into the Spirit Sphere. So Long Lake Fisherman is a spirit ally. It's a 2-cost ally, 1 willpower, 1 hit, 0 defense, 2 hit points. Basically what you're going to be trying to do here is search for an attachment probably that you know you want to get. So say King of Dale, you haven't found it, you've mulliganed, you've still not got it, you've got one of these in your hand, you might say 2 because you know the cost of King of Dale is 2 resources, so you're able to search for that to pull it back out. You could just look for a common kind of like number if you're kind of a little bit ambivalent about what you're going to find. You might know what your cost curve is, be able to work out what the likelihood of it is, but that feels like a less optimal usage of the card. This I think would be searching for something. If you're an Institute of Gondor and King of Dale, for instance, both strong 2-cost attachments, you might guess at 2 and pull both, and you kind of got some options for yourself there. Even Unexpected Courage as well, 2-cost is not a bad place to kind of go to. So looking now, we have a 0-cost spirit attachment, 0-cost attachments in the Dell deck with the item keyword. My goodness, it's fantastic. This is the kind of stuff that you should be looking for. It enables so much. It's got to go on a spirit or a scout character, a fair few of those, and it's limit 1 per character. And what you do is you exhaust the character, so you discard the cloaks. It can't be reharvested by Bard, and you get a non-unique enemy in the staging area. That doesn't make engagement checks against you. I'm a little bit ambivalent about that kind of stuff. Possibly in a secrecy deck, if you kind of want to be running that to try to avoid the enemies as much as possible. Difficulty with an enemy that's in the staging area is its threat still there. You've done nothing about it. Maybe you want to do that, maybe you don't. It's also engagement checks against you. So if you're playing multiplayer, it still maybe make engagement checks against a different player. This could be quite useful in my Spirit Questing deck, which is not interested in managing enemies at all, because it would just be like, right, no thanks, don't need that. So this is possibly not necessarily a Dale focus attachment, beyond the fact it's an item and beyond the fact it's an attachment and turns on so much. Next is a unique neutral attachment, very similar to the Necklace of Grimbeorn. The Arkenstone is a treasure of Erebor. It's guarded, so it has the same question in terms of the Necklace of Grimbeorn. When is safe to play this? Do I really want to have this? Each unique character you gain, you control gains +1, so you've got at least 3 unique characters in terms of the heroes that you're running, so possibly more. So again, +1 to a kind of unique ally-based deck. It feels a little bit awkward. Dwarves, however, because of the characters and the Hobbit, really do run a lot of named allies. Therefore, this really can turn on, quite thematically, a dwarf questing deck. Or in fact, just a dwarf swarm deck in lots of ways. And essentially what you're able to do then is just move it around. So somebody can claim this, and then do a shenanigan to move it to a different player, essentially, and therefore then they will gain control of this, and therefore it will hit them. So if that questy dwarfy deck doesn't have the power to kind of take the enemy out, then its companion Murderdeath Kill deck can come and claim the Archon Stone and then hand it across to them, and be less obvious in the eyes of Sauron, which is kind of what threat kind of manages in terms of that through that transaction. I really do think this is quite a clever card. Not so much about Dale, more about Dwarf, but Erebor is just to the north, boys. Okay, so that's the kind of Withered Heath. Really does support the Dale archetype. I really do think Guardian Graf, the Squire's Helm really help out that archetype quite a bit. I think Grimbeorn has a good synergy with it to be that third wheel, and I think Grimbeorn and a couple of the other cards here really helped a kind of Bjorning tactics deck. And Grimbeorn is a good hero for a solo player who's kind of wondering how they get through those first 2 or 3 rounds where enemies are just hard. They might not be powerful, but you've got actions that are getting sucked up trying to deal with them. Let Grimbeorn just deal with all aspects of that enemy, defending and killing it ASAP. So I would recommend picking up the Withered Heath, especially so if you are doing core and this deluxe to try and build out a sensible archetype for your card set. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. We're pushing more kind of content out with regards to Lord of the Rings, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.